Hi, welcome to the Frugal Frau. I'm Suki, your host, and today, as part of the Three Rivers 2024 Pantry Challenge, I have made a recipe using mostly things from my pantry. And the thing I wanted to really emphasize in today's recipe was I'm using dried potatoes, because a few people have asked me, well, what are you going to do with all those dried potatoes? So, well, here's an example. This is what I call a potato and parsnip paprikash. So it's simply layered potatoes and paprikash with good things like butter and onions and creme fraiche in between, topped off with cheese and also dried tomatoes. I probably should have put them further down in the mix because they got a little scorched. And then after it was cooked, I put the pumpkin seeds on top because I had already toasted them. I tend to keep them a little just on hand because I like them for a lot of things. Now, the potatoes that I dry are pretty dry. So my method of rehydrating them, since I have a wood cook stove and it's winter, I just pour boiling water in a pot to cover them well, almost to the top of the pot. And then I just let it simmer on the wood stove all night long. And of course, the wood stove's not going to be at full firing the entire night. It's going to go down to coals by the time morning gets there. And then if necessary, I stick a fork in and test how done they are, because I like to have them fairly soft before I put them in the casserole, because they just are a little resistant to rehydrating by just pure cooking with whatever moisture happens to be in your casserole. So if necessary, I will boil them for a little bit until I know that they are soft. And some varieties potatoes take longer than other varieties to rehydrate. And that is the case with my potatoes. The white ones, which are German butterballs, tend to rehydrate much quicker than the Adirondack Blues, which are a drier potato, so they actually take longer to rehydrate. And then the red Adirondacks are in between those two. But I just throw them in all the pot together because I really don't separate them when I dry them. And it doesn't matter. It comes out just fine. Now, I could have made this in any kind of other flavors. So I could have made this like a Mexican dish with Mexican flavors, or I could have made it Indian dish. I think the options are endless. And you can still use the creme fraiche and just put different herbs and spices in. So you have lots of variety there. Now, because I made it vegetarian, and you could make it as a meat dish by simply layering maybe chunked ham or prosciutto or whatever meat you've canned in there, and then you would have a main meal. But I didn't do it that way. I chose to do it as a vegetarian dish. And we're going to sit that on top of the stove later and reheat it. But I wanted to show you the complete dish first. Now, for making a whole meal out of it, I took some of my pre-canned Rockwell beans and I put my vinaigrette over them, put them in the refrigerator, let them just soak up those flavors overnight, of course with a little extra chopped garlic and chopped onion added in there, because that always makes everything better in my opinion. And then I chopped up a cabbage. This was perhaps one of the last cabbages I think I have in the root cellar. I might have one or two left, but I need to get them eaten up fairly quickly because they're not going to last much longer out there. And I opened up a can of cranberries because I like to have pretty color with it. And plus I love cranberries. I think I keep stating that because they really are one of my favorite fruits to eat. And then a friend of mine in California gifted me, and she does this every year, fresh citrus from the trees in her backyard. So she doesn't spray those trees. I know it's totally organic, and of course she hasn't put any kind of preservatives on the outside to keep them fresh. So I have to use them up fairly quickly. And as I eat them, I peel the skins off and I chop the skins up real fine. And I always make orange peel, or it's actually orange and lemon. And then she has a tree that's a cross with a lemon and a lime, so I'm not sure what that's called. But I simply put these in a big glass container in the refrigerator with a little bit of sugar, and I mix it up and put a little bit of sugar as I need it. trying to, be minimal with my sugar because I don't want to consume that much sugar. But it's a nice garnish, and it's a nice way to have this little extra zesty flavor to add to things. So I'm probably going to put this on both my cabbage salad and my cranberries because I like it that way. And then of course I have extra pumpkin seeds, which I do roast ahead of time. And I tend to keep these around almost all the time, just so I have them to put on different things, just for a little extra crunch. So we're going to get started on the process I used for cooking this, and I will see you later when we get to that. So I hope you will enjoy this video, and I hope you will try a meal like this with dried potatoes. Well, welcome back. In the meantime, Tom and I have enjoyed that lovely meal which I showed at the beginning of the video, and now I want to show you how I constructed the dried potato and parsnip casserole. I have everything prepared ahead of time. I have my parsnips chopped. I have my potatoes well hydrated, and I just want to show you, see the white ones are quite soft, and the blue ones, which, yes, when you do this and dry them, they lose a lot of their color, but they are a bit more al dente than the white ones. And that's just the nature of that variety of potato. So I don't have any red potatoes in this batch either. Not that I can tell. And then there might be some in there, but the red and the blue sort of look similar by the time they get rehydrated. Then I have onions, which I have caramelized in butter, and that goes on there. And this is my creme fraiche. This was just adding buttermilk to heavy cream, and I had probably almost the same amount of buttermilk and the same amount of heavy cream. Now, that's not the only way to do it. You can also do it by just adding a couple of tablespoons of the buttermilk to the heavy cream. And what I did was I did it by just dumping the entire containers of each, because that's how I want to use this. And I let it sit on the counter overnight. And that, covered of course, and that turns the cream into creme fraiche. Now, it's not as thick as it would be because I added so much buttermilk, but that's okay. I don't care. And then I have my rehydrated tomatoes, also from my pantry, and I have not drained them, so I'll have to drain them before I assemble this. I have my herb mixture. I took various and sundry dried herbs that I had, and that included a small amount of jalapeno peppers that I've saved. They're probably 2 or 3 years old, and I crushed them up, and I crushed it with paprika and basil, dried basil, and dried oregano, all from the garden, of course, and no salt or pepper. I'll let that be added at some future time when it's served. After I assemble all of this, I'm simply going to cover them well, and I'm going to put them on a tray, and I'm going to go out there and put them in the root cellar. It's cold enough to keep it all fresh, and I can save it for when I have guests later this week. So let's get started with the assembly process. First, I'm going to drain the tomatoes. Okay, they're draining. Now I want to grease my pans. My guests are vegetarians, so to keep them from having to eat lard, I'm going to grease the pans with coconut oil. I keep a good supply of this because it's actually an excellent oil to cook with. It can tolerate high heat without any harmful or ill effects. And I was a little hesitant at first to use coconut oil because I don't really like coconut as a flavor. And I thought the coconut oil might have a coconut flavor. So when I first purchased this, I only purchased one small jar. And I quickly found out, oh, it doesn't taste like coconut. I don't have to worry about a flavor that I don't particularly care for. So now I use this quite a bit in cooking, and when I don't have lard on hand, I can revert to this. Or if I have vegetarians coming for dinner, I can simply be honest and make sure that they don't have to eat any meat products or animal products. So everybody's happy. So I like to start off with the potatoes. They've been draining for a while, and I'm reserving the water to add to the bread I have on my counter that has been fermenting for about 4 days now. So I simply just line the bottom with potatoes. I don't get too fancy about this because it really doesn't matter. By the time you cut into it and get all the layers on there, nobody sees if it's messy or the slices are perfect. We don't need that. And you'll notice that these are quite small in diameter potatoes, but that's on purpose. I always choose the smaller potatoes to be the dehydrating potatoes as opposed to the larger potatoes, which I like to keep intact in the total potato form for the root cellar. Now, wipe my hands off here, and I'll put a little layer of herbs down right away, just a tiny bit, not a whole lot, just so I make sure that herb flavor gets infused throughout the entire casserole. Next, I'm going to put a little layer of the creme fraiche, and I have plans for whatever creme fraiche is left over if I don't use it all, and I don't think I will. And my plan for the leftover creme fraiche is to make an Indian red lentil dish. And I think my vegetarian friends will like that too. So this is more of a Paprikash dish. So we'll have an Hungarian side dish and a Indian main dish. And that'll be fun. So everybody gets happy here, and putting the parsnips. They're simply been peeled and chopped. No other preparation because they did come straight from the root cellar. I still have a few more of these I can dig up, so I'm hoping I can get them out of the ground before it freezes and then keep them. This was the first year I actually planted parsnips, and I think I stated in another video that I also planted some in a raised bed, but that bed is now so frozen I can't unfortunately get any of the parsnips out. And I will remember not to do that again. And in the future, I think I'll plant more parsnips. I don't know why I haven't done this before as a gardener. I have no good reason for that or good rationale. I actually like parsnips, and there's all kinds of things you can do with them, but this is a parsnip and potato au gratin. Now, what I want to do is put a little more of the herb mixture in there. There. So moving right along, I will put onions in next. And looks like I didn't do enough onions. But that's okay. You know what we're going to do? I'll do those later. And I'll set this one aside so I remember to put more onions on there. Get those out. And that's good. That's there. Alrighty. Now, what I want to do is just, I think I'll put the tomatoes on here too. There we go. There. So now I've got tomatoes. And really, the order of the layers is really unimportant. It's whatever you want to do. No rules here. So I think I'll put another layer of potatoes. And because this is a Paprikash, lots more cream. And this will make this a very nice and moist dish when it's fully cooked. So I can't tip it too much now. But yeah, that's quite lovely. Now all I really need to do is put the cheese on top. And then I'll just top it off with a little herb. And that will give it a little bit of color at the end when it's cooked. But all I have to do is simply pop this in the oven. And that will make a wonderful dish. And, you know, if I put beans in this, it could be considered as a main dish for a vegetarian, and that would be fine too. But since I planned to do the lentils because I know I'm going to have extra cream, I'm not going to do that. So that is our beautiful assembled but uncooked potato and parsnip au gratin. Okay, I'm caramelizing the onions. I went back out and got another onion from the root cellar and decided to chop it up and then just caramelize it down here on this electric cook surface. Now the type of onions I grew last summer were Stuttgarters. And I've cut the top and bottom off of this onion already. They're kind of a flattish onion, and they love to hold onto that papery skin. But I've found that if I rub them around like you do with garlic, the skin comes off much easier. So that's a trade-off because they are an extremely good keeper. So these are starting to caramelize and brown up, but I want to let them go a little bit longer. Okay, I did go ahead and complete the caramelization of these onions, and so let's get them on. So there, a nice layer of onions. And at this point, I don't have any more tomatoes rehydrated. So I'm just going to leave it off of this one. It really doesn't matter whether it's on there or not. Like most of my casseroles, things are optional. Different herbs are optional. Different types of sauce are optional. Just depends on the flavor that you are going for. So let me put a little cheese in this layer. And of course, let's add more of the creme fraiche. I really like this. And this will be a nice accompaniment to the red lentils. And I will do some sort of salad and greens for the rest of the part of this meal. And I'll put another layer of parsnips on here. The sweetness of the parsnips is a nice contrast to the very savoriness of the onions and the potatoes. And so I think it makes a really nice combination. All right, now the final layer of cheese. And I will have 2 pans of this delightful and rich for what's going to be a side dish of a vegetarian meal. It's nice to be able to have it prepared ahead of time. And I try to do that whenever possible. And I have a lot of potatoes left over. And I'm going to fry up a good deal of those in the morning with our breakfast. And I'll probably just go ahead and chop the parsnips up finer and add that too. I'll probably also add chopped cabbage to it. And I might mix up eggs. And I might even cut these up smaller so that everything gets kind of crispy. And then I can meld it together with the eggs. And that makes a nice breakfast. I'll go ahead and chop this onion up since it's already cut. And before we stop, I wanted to show you that these onions are very difficult to get this. It just wants to peel off like that. But if I press it down like this, and I'm pressing fairly firmly, I am breaking that bond that wants to keep that paper on, including that first layer there. Easy. I used to fight with that until I figured out, well, why don't I just do it like I do garlic? So I decided to start doing it that way, and it's successful. Oops. There we go. And all right. Well, that one's being much more stubborn. There, I just didn't press it hard enough. Okay, so I can chop those up, and I can do that a little bit later and put everything aside so that in the morning, breakfast will be very easy. And I will simply put the leftover creme fraiche also in the cold box, well covered of course, and upright so that it doesn't spill over. And I can use that when I make the lentil dish in a couple of days. It should keep just fine. Now, it won't keep much longer than that, but it will keep until then. So that concludes this meal and how I'm using various and sundry things that we just have on hand, either in the root cellar or in the canning cupboards or in the dry food bins. And it's really nice to have all those different options when you're trying to strictly eat from your pantry. And you might ask, why am I putting this in a cold box and not in the refrigerator? Well, yes, I do have a refrigerator with a small freezer underneath. But I do this because I'm practicing a bunch of techniques to see what I can do without using modern conveniences. I know that may seem odd to some people, but there may come a time when that's necessary. So I thought I'd practice and see if I could do it. Because after all, our ancestors didn't have all these modern conveniences, and they obviously survived because we are here today. And then one other last thing I want to say is I'm wearing a very lovely apron today. And this apron was sent to me by a very dear and very long-term old friend, and we've recently connected in the last couple of years. And so she sent me this lovely apron with all these little chicken motifs on it after she learned that I had chickens and hens, and she thought that was cool, and I wasn't even expecting it. I just got this package one day and opened up, and here was this lovely apron. So I say thank you, dear friend, for such a lovely and thoughtful gift. And with that, my listeners, have a good evening or a good day or a good start of your day wherever you are. Thank you for watching.